Hi everybody, welcome to the 8th lesson of Learn Revit API course. And we're going to talk about how to back up your pyRevit extension on the GitHub and how to share it with your team. I'm going to start this lesson with a presentation about Git for beginners, and then we will install GitHub Desktop, and I'm going to show you how to create your GitHub repository where we're going to host our pyRevit extension. There's quite a lot to cover, and you'll be able to find all the timestamps right here on the video or somewhere in the description. And let's start this lesson with a presentation where I will show you how to back up and share your pyRevit code with your team. As pyRevit developers, you should all back up your code regularly. And we all postpone it until one day we lose a chunk of data and then we regret for not doing it earlier. And I speak from personal experience, as I've also lost a bunch of scripts because I rushed and made some stupid mistakes. So let's back up your code before it's too late. Now, first of all, let's talk about what are your backup options. Obviously, you could take SSD drive, connect it and drop your files there once in a while, but this is not robust. Then I've also heard from many people that they like to sync folders to the cloud using services like Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, and they automatically sync their code to the cloud for safe backup and easy access for multiple devices. But this option is not recommended for sharing your extension with a team, because I've heard from a few people in my community who tried to use sync folders, and they told that they started to get some kind of pyRevit errors, and it all point back to these kind of sync clouds. So instead of that, you should all back up your extensions on the Git. And this is the best option by far. You can use platforms like GitHub to secure your code and be able to share it with your team. Git is by far the best option for backing up your code with a lot of benefits. And this is the recommended way to share it with the team. And now we're actually going to talk about what the hell is Git. Git is a tool that helps developers to keep track of changes made to files, it keeps version history, and it allows seamless collaboration on code projects between different developers. So Git will provide you code version control, and Git tracks all changes made to all your code and all the files, and it allows you to revert back to other states, compare, and collaborate on code revisions. Also, it provides you ability to create and manage multiple branches, enabling parallel development of features without disrupting the main branch. And lastly, it also allows you to seamlessly integrate changes from different branches back into the main codebase. Now, I know it still sounds confusing, but let's have a look at the Git example. And this has a really good illustration, and here in the middle you can see the green line, and this represents the main codebase of your repository. Then each dot represents all updates or kind of saving files to your Git branch. And you can see on the left we start with the first dot, and in there we have file 1, 2, 3, 4, and they all have version 1.0. And then you decide that you want to work on the feature 1 and you don't want to affect the main branch. So you're going to branch out to the feature 1 branch and you're going to modify file 1 and 3. And in here you save 2 times. Then somewhere in the middle of working on the feature 1, you also decide to work on the feature 2. So you make another branch and you work on the file 2 and 4. And then whenever your features are ready, you're ready to merge them back into the main codebase. And you can see the feature 1 went in the first green dot on the right, and then feature 2 went in the second green dot. And the best part about Git is that it allows you to kind of monitor all the changes that you make. You can compare any states and you can see all the code changes. And if you ever need to go back in time and have a look at what was the code state and bring it back, it's all possible. And this is the main benefit of using Git for backing up your code. But how do you use the Git? And there are 3 options. First of all, we can use command line interface. Using Git via CLI will give you the most control and functionality, but it's also the least beginner-friendly option. It's best for advanced developers who want to get the most out of Git functionality. And honestly, I think it should be avoided by the beginners for a while. Then the second option is going to be some kind of graphical user interface Git. There are UI clients for using Git which are made for beginners with limited functionality. You'll be able to use features like commit, pull, push, branch, and you don't really need much more than that when you start. And this is best for beginners who don't need many features and you want to start very quick and very simple. I personally started with GitHub Desktop and I still use it, and sometimes I also use command line interface. And then there is also a third option, which is IDE integration. Git is also integrated in the most popular IDEs like PyCharm, Visual Studio Code, and many others. This makes it more accessible while having access to the most features. This is best for people who want to do everything from their IDE and you don't mind learning how does it work in your specific IDE. But also a big remark, because you can use multiple options at once. I often use GitHub Desktop for committing changes, pushing and pulling, and once in a while I open CLI when I need more advanced features for my Git. but it doesn't happen that often, so I'm very happy by using just GitHub Desktop by updating my branch. And also, in my case, for example, I don't really use branches. I always work on the latest repository branch, and I just update it to the latest state. So on this image, I would always create the green dots, and I don't really care about branches. However, if you're going to be multiple developers in the office, then you should definitely consider how to branch out. And now let's talk about Git Cloud hosting. GitHub is by far the most popular code hosting platform used by 100 million developers worldwide. And it's also free to use. There are some paid plans for more serious developers working in large teams or enterprises. But for all of you pyRevit developers, you don't really need a paid plan for GitHub. GitHub can also be used as portfolio for developers. It tracks how active you are, and you can create both public and private repositories and even collaborate on other open source projects. You can even collaborate on the pyRevit extension itself if you think that you can help the development team. And now we finished the main points about the Git in this presentation, and now it's time for practice. We're gonna go and download GitHub Desktop. We're gonna set up your first repository there. We're gonna upload all your pyRevit extension in there. And then I'm gonna show you how can you share your extension if it's hosted publicly or privately, because there are gonna be a bit different methods. Without further ado, let's open a web page and we're gonna write here GitHub Desktop. Then look for this website, desktop.github.com/download. In here, I'm gonna download it for the Windows. And now, once it's downloaded, we can run the installer and install it as usual. In my case, I've deleted GitHub Desktop from my computer before this lesson, but it still triggers it really quick, and it even kind of remembers all my repositories. I don't want to look where all the cache data is saved, so just follow the installation until you can log into your GitHub Desktop. Then when you do that, you want to go to File, and right here go to Options, and the Accounts, you want to sign into your GitHub account. I'm going to sign into mine, and I have to use the browser. I'm going to click on Continue. It already remembers me. If you don't have GitHub account, just create it. It's going to be very simple. Now, eventually, you're going to see this interface, and this is how it looks. In here, you can set up your repositories, and if you don't have anything here, you can click here, and you see here, Add, and you have options. You can clone repository, you create new repository, or you can add existing repository. To keep it simple, let's create new repository, and in here, I'm going to call mine Learn Revit API. You can give some description, and also you need to choose the local path, because it's going to be saved on the cloud, but also it's going to be synced to the folders on your local cloud. In my case, I'm going to go to update like this, then I'm going to create new folder, and I'm going to write GitHub pyRevit. And I don't think that I need to create a special folder for Learn Revit API. This is going to be just fine. Then it gives you an option to create a README file. I'm going to click yes, but you don't have to. I'm going to explain what it means and show you examples. For the Git Ignore, don't select anything, and for the license, these are the 3 most common licenses, and you can ask ChatGPT if you want to create one of them. It will explain it pretty well. I'm not going to select any. And then we're going to click on Create Repository, and this is how it looks. Now, in here on the right, it tells you that you need to publish your repository to GitHub, because it's still not available on the GitHub, it's only on your local machine right now. So let's go and do that. I'm going to click on Publish, and also decide whether it's private or public repository. I'm going to keep it public for now, and then later I'm going to make it private and show you the difference. Now, let's publish the repository, and now it's supposed to be on GitHub. So let's put it a little bit here on the side. I'm going to go to github.com, Eric Fritz, and then somewhere you will see that you have created a new repository. And in here it says it's public. Let's click on that, and it's going to be empty, and it only has this README file with a markdown file format. And this README represents your kind of landing page right here. Let's actually go and have a look at the GitHub pyRevit extension. I'm going to open this first one, and also I'm going to open my EF tools. In here, you can see an example how a proper extension looks like. In here, you'll also see there are releases, packages, a lot of contributors, deployments, and then there is a main page of this repository, and this all comes from the README file. So you can go to any extension, click on the README, you'll see all of that. But also, if you're going to see with the row, you'll see with the actual markdown syntax. And you can write your README like this, and you can show anything on the kind of landing page of your extension. Here's my EF Tools extension, and this is what I wrote for my README file. And again, you can go to any of the extension, have a look at the README file, click on row, and here's the markdown syntax that you could just copy, maybe replace some links, replace some images, and that's going to work just fine. There's also GitHub Awesome README repository. I think it's that one. and just a created list of the best README files if you want to make it look nice. Just have a look here, there are a lot of different extensions. I'm just randomly going to click on that one. And if you scroll through, that actually looks pretty good. And you can just easily have a look at the raw code. Now, next, let's actually put our extension right there. So I'm going to go to Revit API extension and just go to the .extension root folder. And from here, I want to copy all my folders. Also keep in mind that this .idea comes from the PyCharm, and it's just kind of keeping some kind of cache and settings about your project. You can delete it, and it's going to appear anytime you're going to sort of right-click and open your project as a folder, or from the PyCharm, you're going to click on Open and select this folder. So we want to take everything inside of that extension, and then we want to go to our local folder for the GitHub. I place mine right here, GitHub Revit, and I'm going to kind of paste it here. Now, whenever you're going to add any files inside of there and go to your GitHub desktop, you'll see all the changes. In here, it obviously tells you that there are a lot of different files, and I click on each one of them, and I can see changes right here. Since it's everything new, obviously everything is going to be marked in green. But also, if I would remove something, it would be in red, and you can go through the code and easily compare it. We're going to do this in a second. Now, to send all these files to the GitHub, we need to first commit it to the main branch or any other branches, and then push it. To commit it, you can see that in here, you can select all the files you want to commit. Maybe I want to send just one, or maybe I send everything. And then in here, I'm going to write a comment, published learn Revit API extension. Let's add some emoji. And now we can click on commit to the main. Now you can see we committed all these files, but they're still not available on the GitHub. Because right here, you have to click on the push origin. And this way, you actually will push it to the GitHub, to the main branch, or to whatever branch have you committed it. We just did this, and now all these files should be visible on the GitHub. Let's open and have a look. So I had nothing, and if I'm going to restart, you can see in here I have all the files. Right here is the name of my commit, and it tells me when it was last updated. Now also, I forgot to show you, but let's go back to the pyRevit GitHub. In here, in this repository, you can see that there was 5,742 commits. You can click on it, and in here there are all the commits, and you can also see all the branches if they use multiple. And for example, if I'm going to click on something here, let's just scroll and click on the random, I don't know, updated README, you can see all the changes. For example, on this one, they added support on the Open Collective, and here is the link. I'm going to go back. If I'm going to go back and scroll further, you can see that, for example, here, they removed URL pointing to somewhere, they removed something, they added something, and so on. You can see all the changes that were ever published. Now, in your extension, you probably by now have two commits. You probably have your initial commit, this is where you published your extension, and now here's the published Learn Revit API extension. Also, I showed you a cool feature about GitHub in one of the previous lessons, and I want to show it again. First of all, we need to go outside of commit, and we have to be on the main branch somewhere here. Then you can come here, and instead of github.com, change it to github.dev. You can do it even when you already opened some file there. Now, what it's going to do, it's going to open online version of Visual Studio Code. And in here, you can see everything on your Git repository, and you can even modify this. Let's say that I want to open this README file, and I want to change it. I'm going to remove what's here right now, and then I'm going to paste here some text from my website. Now, I'm happy with that, and I want to commit it. You will also notice that here's a new icon, and it says here Source Control. If we're going to click on here, this is how you can push changes to a GitHub repository. We need to write here a message. We're going to write updated README file. Let's also drop there an icon. And now when I'm ready, I can kind of select the file and click commit and push. And you'll see that it has committed it. Now, let's go back to github.com and see if we can see these changes. Now when I go here, you can see there's a bunch of text here because I've just updated this README file. But the reason I did this is because now if I'm going to go to GitHub desktop and I'm going to click here on fetch the origin, it's going to check the state of the GitHub repository. And now we can see in here that we can pull one commit from the origin remote. We can either click right here, or I think we can also click here on the top. Yes, normally this is where you click. All right, and now it's updated, and this is how you would normally kind of pull and push whenever you work with multiple people on the same extension. But if you work alone, you'll probably just kind of keep clicking here and kind of push the new updates. Now we're going to installation part, and there are three parts. First, I'm going to show you how to install it for developers. And then I'm going to show you how to install it for regular users using public repository and private repository. And we're going to start with how to install it for developers. First of all, let's go to Revit, and you can see here's the extension that I copied and placed on my Git. And I need to change some stuff here. So first of all, I'm going to go to pyRevit and go to my settings. And I'm gonna remove the path to where this extension is currently placed, because right now it's not on the Git, it's somewhere locally you placed in the previous lessons. And in my case, I placed it right here in my Revit extensions. I'm just gonna remove the path, and you can always bring it back if you're afraid of losing it. All right, I removed it, and you can see right now here's nothing. And now let's open the folder where we placed our extension on the GitHub. In my case, I placed it in the app data. I created this GitHub pyRevit folder, and here's my Learn Revit API. But you'll notice right away, but it just has Learn Revit API and it's missing this .dat extension, and we need to fix that. Let's pull up the GitHub desktop right now, and I'm just gonna keep it here on the side so you can always see it. We can just take it and rename it here, because if you're gonna do that, you'll notice that it cannot find it. One way would be, okay, we have this .dat extension and we can locate it. You can click here, you're gonna go to extension, and right here you have this invisible .git folder, and this is what it needs. I don't think we need to select it directly, we just need the path to this extension. And I'm gonna click on select folder. And you can see it works. It still shows you here as current repository is Learn Revit API, but right here you have that extension in the end. And this is what's important. Now, this is one of the ways, but let's say that you are the one who placed it on the GitHub, but now you have other developers in your company and you want them to have the same kind of access where they can also use the Git. Now, for this case, what we're gonna do is we're gonna imagine that I'm one of these developers and I don't have it. I literally gonna delete it and I don't have to worry. Because as you know already, it's already placed on the GitHub and everything is safe. You can see here all the files and everything there. But I just don't have it locally. And this is what I need to do. So you would have your developers to go here and they would need to copy this. Let's also imagine that we don't even have it here. They just installed the GitHub desktop, they created their account, and now they want to have this extension. First of all, you need to make sure that either your extension is public or they have the rights to the extension. I'm not gonna go that deep, you can do it on your own. But once they have the access, they can click here on add, and then they wanna clone repository. Then they're gonna go to their GitHub account and they're gonna see all their extensions. In my case, I'm interested in Learn Revit API, and I need this one, the first one. Then make sure that the local path is exactly what you wanted, and it's right here in GitHub pyRevit Learn Revit API. Also, I wanna make sure that I already have that extension right here, so I don't have to rename it and locate it again. And I'm just gonna click on clone it. Now, all your users will have the same menu here. They will see here's their current repository, and it's right here. Now what we need to do is copy the path where it's located, then go to Revit, pyRevit. Right here, we're gonna go to settings, and we need to provide this path same as usual. Now, I'm gonna click on add folder, provide it here, select folder, and we're just gonna save and reload right away. And this way, you and all your other developers will be able to have this extension, which is hosted on the GitHub, but all of you have your own local copy where you can make the changes. And again, if you are just single developer, you can just always create the new commits. However, if you are many developers and you want to work on different features and you don't want to disturb your main repository, then you should consider branching. As I've showed you earlier, branching is when you can go away from the main code, work on your changes or maybe new tools, and when you're ready, you can bring them back to the main code so everybody has them. And this way, you won't disturb others with your changes, even if you're going to delete something. All right, in Revit, it has loaded, and here is my extension. Now, let's test if it actually works. Let's just quickly go here, and I'm just going to duplicate this button. I'm just going to copy paste it, and it's going to be development button 4. I'm going to remove the copy in the end. And let's also open and change the name of the button to button 4. So here in title, I'm going to write button 4, save it. I'm just going to reload pyRevit to see these changes in Revit as well. And while it's reloading, I'm just going to open my GitHub desktop. And right here, you can see a lot of different files. And in here, you'll notice here are the 2 files for your new button 4. And you'll also notice that you don't see the folder. You always see the files because folder is already included here. And in here, you can see .idea, and there are some files. As I mentioned, this .idea files, they're used by PyCharm to hold some kind of cache and settings. Now, we want to select it and deactivate it because we don't want to push this .idea files. But I want to push my dev button 4. Let's write here that I've created a dev button 4. I don't want to add any description. I'm just going to commit it to the main. Once you commit, we're also going to push it. And now everybody using this Git repository will be able to see it. After they're going to click here on fetch and they're going to pull it. In your case, you're not going to see any pull messages here because you are the one who pushed it and you already have it locally. And also, you don't want to see all these files every time you come here because you would have to deselect them every time, and this is very annoying. And there is a solution for that. You can right click, and in here, there's going to be ignore file. And in the parentheses, it says add to Git Ignore. What we want to do is we want to ignore the folder. So I'm going to click on that one, and it asks me which folder, and I want to ignore this .idea. Let's click on this one, and you'll see all these files disappeared, and we created a new .gitignore file. And this is a special file where you can put different syntax inside. You can ignore certain files, you can ignore certain folders, and you can even ignore certain file extensions. Let's say that you want to ignore all Excel reports in your extension for some reason. There is a way to do that, and you can Google how to do that. I'm just going to add here, added Git Ignore. Let's give it fire emoji, and we're going to commit, and then we're going to push it to the origin. Now, your whole team won't be able to commit this .idea folder to your Git repository. And this is great. And you can update this Git Ignore to all the other files that you don't want to see in your GitHub repository. All right, this was the step number 1. But now let's imagine that you are the developer and you want to share your extension with others. And there are different ways to do this. First one, if you work in small to medium-sized offices, what you could do exactly what we did here, but instead of kind of saving it locally in your app data, you would go to your kind of company server, which is maybe D drive or whatever it's called, then find a folder there and place your extension there, which is already linked to GitHub. Only you will have the GitHub desktop installed, and you'll be in control what comes out to the GitHub and so on. And then all the other users in your company will just give the path to this folder location in the pyRevit, and then they will all have the latest version of this pyRevit extension. This is one of the ways. But then let's say that you want to do it a bit differently. For example, as you know, you go in pyRevit, and then here in extensions, you can install all the other extensions here, all right? For example, let me select the EF tools, and let's see that you also want to have your extension here. And when users want to get any updates, they would have to remove extension and enable it again. I'm not going to do that because EF tools have some changes, so I'm definitely not going to get rid of that. But let's say that we want to add it to this list. This is how we're going to do this. First, I'm going to open my EF tools extension. And I'm just going to go to the root folder of my extension because there is one file that I want to show you. Let's go to that extension. And right here, you'll notice there's extension.json. I'm going to open this file. There's just a JSON file with certain kind of keys, and then there's values. For example, built-in is false, default enabled is true, and so on. What's important here is the name, maybe description, author. You can use your profile if you want. Then this one is the most important because here you need to provide the URL to your GitHub extension. And this is what we're going to do for Learn Revit API now. Then there's also a website if you want and a few others, but they are not so necessary. Also, if you're going to go to pyRevit developers documentation, right here you'll notice share your extensions. And in here it's pretty much the same information. You need to provide all of this, and here is a template. You could just copy this template, or you could go to any existing kind of extensions like EF tools or maybe some other ones and just take it from there. So let's copy it from here. Then we need to go to your Learn Revit API extension. Now, in here, we're going to create a new file. I need to call it extension dot, and make sure that it's a .json file format. If you don't see your file formats, you can extend that one, click on view, then show, and right here is the file name extensions. Now we want to open it, and you can open it with the regular Notepad, but I like to use Notepad++. It's a bit faster and nicer. I'm going to paste here what I just saw in pyRevit developers documentation, which is this one. And now we're going to change. This one we don't care, we don't care, we don't care. Then for the name, I'm going to call it Learn Revit API. Description, I'm going to leave the same. Author, let's put my name in here. Then for the profile, I don't really care for this extension. And now this is really important. We need to change this to ours. Let's open our extension, and you can see mine is at the github.com/ericfried/learn Revit API. But in here, I'm going to paste it and just make sure that you have .git in the end. This is also important part. Now for the website, I don't care as well, and that's it. Pretty much you just need to provide the URL and name right here, and all other things, they're pretty much optional. Now let's save it. I'm also going to copy this whole thing because this is not enough. Now I'm going to close it. Now let's go to the app data because we need to find our pyRevit masters folders. It should be somewhere here. Then I think I need to go to extensions, and right here you can see all the default pyRevit extension, and then there's extensions.json. Now let's open it again with the Notepad. And you'll notice here there is the same thing but over and over and over. There's a key extensions, and then inside there's a list. Here's extension number 1, here's extension number 2, extension 3, 4, 5, and so on. And these are all built-in extensions inside of pyRevit. You'll notice that somewhere here is my EF Tools extension. I can see it here. And what you have to do, you have to scroll all the way down. And right now, it's really important. This is the last one. And you have to put here a comma, then space, and then paste your kind of dictionary. And make sure you don't put the comma again. In this JSON, it should not be there. You will get some kind of error, but don't worry, you'll be able to ask ChatGPT or any other JSON formatters to correct it, right? And you're gonna paste whatever you just created here. Once I'm gonna make Ctrl S. Now let's come in here in Revit, pyRevit. I'm gonna go straight to extensions. I don't even have to reload anything. I'm gonna scroll down. I'll notice here Learn Revit API. It's made by Eric Fritz. Here's the description, which is extension for pyRevit, and here's the repository. And now I already have it installed, but I could click here, remove extension and install extension, and then it would be installed. And you know what? Let's actually do that so you can actually see. For that, I need to again delete my local extension because I already have it. Or maybe instead of that, I'm actually gonna go to pyRevit paths, settings, and I'm just gonna remove the path from here. This is gonna remove my Learn Revit API extension, which I hosted and gave the path in my GitHub pyRevit folder. You can see it's gone. Now, we can pretend that we are the regular user. I can pretend that we come in here, we find this extension, and you can see right here we have install extension. It will ask you where you wanna install it, and you can just install it in the regular pyRevit path, which is this one. Let's click here, and now it will be installed. You can see right here. And listen, for the large companies, there is also a way to make it simpler with the pyRevit CLI, but honestly, I never used pyRevit CLI yet, and I'll probably invite somebody to talk about it somewhere in the future inside this course. But this is how I know how to do this, and it's not that complicated. You just need to provide this dictionary inside of extensions.json. Alright, and I hope that this will help you back up your pyRevit code and share your extension with your team. And even if you don't want to share your extension, please back it up on the GitHub so you don't lose any of your code. And that's your homework for this lesson. Back up your pyRevit extension on GitHub. And now we're getting very close to the end of this first module, and there are just 2 more lessons ahead of you. In the next one, I will talk about the differences between Dynamo and pyRevit. And then I will close this module with the most common mistakes Revit API developers make, and most importantly, how to avoid them. And you definitely don't want to miss that lesson. So I wish you happy coding, and I hope to see you soon again. Goodbye.